Well, welcome to Sunday Club, boys and girls. Who doesn't love a picnic? I hope you enjoyed some picnics over the summer. The sun is still shining. We can still sit there and enjoy a little bit more of the sunshine with our bread and our cheese and our ham and olives and quiche and ginger beer. I don't know what's your favourite picnic. I don't know what it is. But we're remembering today a famous picnic, maybe the most famous picnic of all, when Jesus was with 5,000 people on a hillside. They had no food, and a little boy says, I got my lunch. And Jesus turned that lunch into a banquet, a picnic, a feast for all those people. Well, let me set the scene. You see, the religious leaders at the time, they came to Jesus and they said, show us a sign, show us a miracle like you did on the hillside. We want to see your power, we want to see a miracle. Show us a sign. They were putting Jesus to the test. And Jesus turned to his friends and said, be careful of these religious leaders. They're like yeast, he said. Jesus said they're like yeast. And we know yeast does amazing things in bread. And Jesus said, be careful of them. Be careful of these religious people. Now, we're going to watch a drama based on the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which is all about bread and fish. Now, in our drama, Jonas, the baker, the best baker in the village, he is about the little boy who gives his lunch, gives his bread rolls to Jesus. And he starts thinking, maybe the little boy got some bread from another baker, and there's another baker in town who's maybe better than him. And he starts to worry that maybe his bread isn't as tasty as this other bread that he hears about. And he starts to get a little bit worried. He starts to think that that is the most important thing, and he starts to get really obsessed, thinking, I'm not up to it anymore, I'm not good enough, my bread's rubbish, maybe I've lost my touch, maybe I need some help, maybe I'm just not good. He starts to believe a load of rubbish. We're going to find out in the story what happens to Jonas, what we find out in the story, and I'll chat to you at the end, because we're remembering today what the key for God's kingdom. And Jonas had got a bit lost. He'd forgotten the key to the kingdom. We'll find out later what it is. See you soon.
People used to come from miles around. It didn't matter who you were, where you were from, or how much money you earned. There was one thing that everyone knew. Carlos the baker made the best bread, and you just had to buy it. There was no point in making your own, because it can never compare with the taste of Carlos's bread. Fresh rolls for breakfast, soft bread for lunch. It was so tasty. One day, Carlos was cleaning up after another fun day of baking and getting things ready for the next morning. He looked out of the window into the distance because he was beginning to get a bit worried. His brother Barry should have been back by now. He'd gone off to spend the day listening to Jesus, and now it was starting to get dark. It was past tea time, and Carlos knew that Barry would be hungry. So he hung up his apron and stood in the kitchen, looked towards the hills once more. This time, he saw people returning, and as they passed by, he could see they were eating. The first person called out to him. Hey, Carlos, this bread is amazing! You should get some. Before he could reply, they'd gone on their way, munching the remains of the bread. It wasn't long before someone else called out. All right, Carlos, I tell you what, you've got some competition now. This bread is the best I've ever tasted.
Huh? What?
Then a third person spoke with him. Carlos, my dear fellow, you know I've always loved your bread and enjoyed tasting it, but this new bread is sensational. I insist you must get the recipe. Here, try a piece.
Oh. It's really good. Really, really good. Oh. I've got some competition.
He went over to them and took some of the bread. He popped a bit in his mouth and was surprised to find out how tasty it was. This was better than his bread. Carlos was now getting worried, so he went back inside to have a think. For years, he'd baked the best bread in the area. No one else's bread came close, and now out of nowhere, someone else was baking better bread. What could he do? If this new person kept it up, he'd be out of business. He was so worried that he didn't notice his brother come in. His brother Barry saw that he was worried. Hey, Carlos.
Hiya.
You look fed up. What's wrong?
Haven't you heard about this new bread? Everyone is talking about it. It's supposed to be amazing, really tasty.
So why are you fed up?
Well, it's not mine, is it? It is I've got competition in the village. I've got no chance now. You laughing now?
Carlos, you do make me laugh. Listen, you're going to love this. Have a seat. Have a sit down. I'm sure you've been on your feet all day.
Yeah, I have.
Grab a cup and let me tell you what's been going on.
I've been working till 4 this morning. Oh.
It's fine. It's fine. Listen, you know I went out in the hills to listen to Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't just me. There were thousands of us. I reckon at least 5,000 men, loads of women, loads of children. And Jesus was talking in such an amazing way, telling stories, making us think about how we live our lives. And all of a sudden, the day had just gone. And it was tea time. And because I was near the front of the crowd, I heard Jesus say to his friends, look, go and get some food for these guys. They look hungry. And they just looked at the crowd and said, don't be daft. It cost a year's wages to feed all these people.
It would.
Yeah, but you know what Jesus is like? He just stood there and smiled and said, just do it. And then one of his mates came up with a little boy and said, this little guy, he's got a couple of fish and a few bread rolls. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. And Jesus said, thanks, and took the food. Then he got his friends to organise us into groups of about 50, I reckon. And we all sat down. And then the most amazing thing happened. You're not going to believe it.
What?
He prayed over these little bit of food.
He
And
prayed?
he started breaking it up. Yeah, he prayed. Gave thanks for the food, like you do.
Yeah.
Started breaking it up and giving it to his friends to give out. And even though there was only a little bit of food, the first group all had enough food somehow. And then my group, we all had loads of food. And the group next to us, and so on. Everybody got better. I don't know how Jesus did it. He has this amazing power so that everyone ate so much. I couldn't eat it all. That's why I've still got a little bit left over. I've had to wait a bit for the rest to go down. Everyone had enough to eat. And there were big basketfuls of scraps left over. It was incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Barry, that doesn't explain the bread. I mean, this bread was tasting amazing and it's not my bread. I'm going to be ruined. There's a better baker in town.
Calm down. Who lives next door to us? What's the name of that little boy? Can you remember?
Is it Timmy?
Timmy.
Yeah.
And what does Timmy do every day without fail?
Well, he comes into our bread shop and buys some bread rolls.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
haven't you worked it out yet? Who do you think the boy was who had the fish and the bread?
It's a difficult one, this.
It was Timmy, wasn't it?
That was Timmy on
Yeah,
the
you see-
hillside with Jesus.
Your bread that Jesus used, there's not another baker in town. You're still the best baker in town. It's just when Jesus prayed over it, he just made it extra special.
I'm still the best baker in town.
You certainly are, my friend. You certainly are.
That's good news. Come on, Barry. There's loads of work to do here. Stop enjoying yourself on the hillside.
Carlos felt relaxed and ate the last of the bread. There was nothing to worry about after all. No one else can make better bread than him. Well, no one except God.
He came down that we might have love. He came down that we might have love. Hallelujah forevermore. down that we might have peace. Hallelujah forevermore. He came down that we might have joy. He came down that we might have joy. He came down that we might have joy.